All right, in this video, we are going to be talking about the sub-organ structures that make up the nervous system, namely the nervous tissues and the cells that make them up. So, system consists mostly of nervous tissue, which is highly cellular. Um, for example, less than 20% of the central nervous system is extracellular space, which means that the cells are densely packed and tightly intertwined. Although it is very complex, the nervous tissue is made up of just two principal types of cells, uh, which are going to be the neurons or the glial cells. So, neuroglia or glial cells are the small supporting cells that surround and wrap around more delicate neurons. So, that is what that green arrow is pointing to around, that's around there. The other component, neurons, are nerve cells that are excitable and transmit electrical signals. That is what these larger staining cells are. We're going to focus mostly on nerves as their function, but we'll talk a little bit about the glial cells that support the nervous system. The fact that the neurons are excitable means that they will respond to stimuli by changing their membrane potential. All right, so let's start with the structure of a neuron. So the neuron is going to consist of the cell body. The cell body is the major biosynthetic and metabolic part. So it's the major component that's going to have all the receptive portions coming off from it. In the central nervous system, clusters of the bodies are known as nuclei, whereas in the peripheral nervous system, the clusters are called ganglia. Um, Dendrites are processes coming off from the cell body. They are what are receiving signals that are coming in from other neurons. The axon is a process which will come off from the cell body. There's always a single axon, although it may branch. Long axons are going to be called nerve fibers, and bundles of these nerve fibers are called tracts in the central nervous system and nerves in the peripheral nervous system. The axons will end in axon terminals. The axon terminals are the secretory region of the axon. This is where the neurotransmitters are going to be stored and released into the extracellular space so that it can interact with either its effector or the next neuron in the circuit. So this extracellular space where the neurons are released is what is known as the synapse. The space between the axon terminal and the dendrites or receiving cell is literally what that component is. In the central nervous system, some of the cells that are going to be protecting them will be the oligodendrocytes. In the peripheral nervous system, these are going to be Schwann cells. So what these cells both are glial cells. They provide the myelin sheath, which is a white fatty substance that protects and electrically insulates the axon so that the nervous signal is going to travel smoothly through here. The nodes of Ranvier are gaps in the myelin sheath. This is where you can get branches from them. All right, so we are now going to take a look at the glial cells. So the glial cells are the also known as glia. They are literally it translates to glue because they are what holds the nervous system together, although they have a variety of different functions. There are 6 different types in the nervous system. We have 4 glial cells. In the peripheral nervous system, there's only 2. Something to remember here is that they are not just scaffolding. They do have important functions in and of themselves, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through there. So first glial cell that we'll talk about are the astrocytes. They are the most abundant and versatile glial cells in the central nervous system. They're called astrocytes because they kind of look like stars with all the branches coming off from them. Their processes will connect to neurons, the synaptic endings, and the capillaries. These make exchanges between the capillaries and neurons more efficient and help determine the capillary permeability. So they help to support neurons and anchor them to the nervous system. These are going to be connected by gap junctions. Remember, gap junctions are known as communicating junctions, so they are going to literally be able to have things flow between them and the cells that they connect to. Right, the next cell type is the glial cells. These are the also known, or these are the next glial cell type are the microglia cells of the central nervous system. They are going to have processes that touch nearby neurons, which help to monitor their health. These are going to be very small. Their processes are thorny looking. If a neuron is damaged, the microglia cells will travel closer to that glial cell or to that neuron, and when it does so, it will transform into a special type of macrophage. This is going to happen when microorganisms or dead neurons are present, and then they will phagocytize these organisms. So they play a protective role in the central nervous system because the cells of the immune system have very limited access to the central nervous system. The next type of glial cells are the ependymal cells. So this means wrappings or garment. They line the central cavities of the brain and the spinal cord. There they form a fairly permeable barrier between the cerebral spinal fluid and the tissue fluid that ultimately are going to be what the cerebral spinal fluid is communicating to. So it covers the cells of the central nervous system. In addition to that, they have cilia, which are going to help to circulate the cerebrospinal fluid in the central nervous system. These can range in shape from squamous to columnar, and obviously, if they are going to circulate the cerebrospinal fluid via cilia, many of them will be ciliated. All right, and then the last glial cell of the central nervous system is going to be the oligodendrocytes. These literally translate to few branches, so they have processes, but the processes are fewer than you see in like the astrocytes. They wrap their processes around thicker nerve fibers and produce the insulated covering called myelin sheaths, like we mentioned earlier. All right, little side note here before we talk about the glial cells of the peripheral nervous system. You may have heard of gray and white matter. These are the two components that the brain and really the entire nervous system is made up of. Gray matter is what you see more on the superficial layer here, while the white matter is typically deeper. Gray matter predominantly contains cell bodies and dendrites. In unstained tissue, it may appear gray, pinkish, or tan. So that's what the pinkish tan is right there. And then the white matter is going to predominantly contain axons. Recall that the axons are going to be what have the myelin sheaths, and the myelin, which is going to be a lipid-rich material, is what gives it its whiter color. In the central nervous system, a localized collection of neuron cell bodies is referred to as a nucleus, versus in the peripheral nervous system, they're known as ganglion. The white matter would be essentially the tracts component, while in the nervous system, you're going to see those referred to as nerves. While gray and white matter apply to both the central and peripheral nervous systems, it's more commonly applied to the central nervous system before that. There is one exception to the terminology we used for the cell bodies. So in the central nervous system, there is a group of nuclei that are connected together and are called basal ganglia before ganglia became accepted as a description for a peripheral structure. So you may hear the term basal ganglia, but oftentimes basal nuclei will be used to just avoid confusion when we're talking about those cell bodies in the central nervous system. All right, let's move to the peripheral nervous system now. Peripheral nervous system glial cells, remember there are two. One are the satellite cells. These surround nerve fibers in the peripheral nervous system and are going to have similar function to the astrocytes. Schwann cells or neurolemnocytes are going to be another type of glial cells. These are what are going to form the myelin sheaths around the nerve fibers. They're similar in function to the oligodendrocytes, and they're vital to regeneration of damaged peripheral nerve tissues. All right, so that covers our cellular and tissue overview of the nervous system. We'll continue talking about different types of neurons in the next video.